Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 28 of Conversing on Africa's Peace, a podcast focused on the African Union's Peace and Security Council and key related issues, produced by Amani Africa Media and Research Services. My name is Previn Habu, and today I'm joined by my colleague Fikir Getachew. Hello, Fikir.
Hi, Previn.
So, Morocco has taken over the role of chairing the Peace and Security Council for the month of March, standing in for the Gambia. This comes as the ambassador of Gambia, Ambassador Jena Bajane, concluded her term in Ethiopia. The program of work adopted under Morocco's leadership seems quite packed, with 4 substantive meetings planned, as well as the inductions of the newly elected members of Peace and Security Council. Those are the Committee of Experts and the ambassadors. But as usual, before we delve into unpacking the program of the work for March, why don't we briefly reflect on PSC's engagement during the previous month, on February, and perhaps capture some of the highlights and major changes introduced to the program in the course of the month. Looking back, Fikir, how was the month of February 2025 with regard to PSC activities?
Looking back, Equatorial Guinea presided over the chairship of the PSC in February 2025, and we saw the PSC having a fairly light program considering that it was also summit month. Much less than the usual number of sessions the PSC convenes during the course of a month. The initial program of work had planned 3 substantive sessions, which were a ministerial session on maritime security and the Gulf of Guinea, a head of state and government session on the consideration of the situation in Sudan, and an ambassadorial level session on the fight against use of child soldiers. However, the provisional program of work underwent 2 revisions during the course of the month. And apart from the planned session on the fight against the use of child soldiers, the first revision saw the inclusion of a new session to consider the situation in Eastern DRC, which was a session that took place at the heads of state and government level on 14 February at the margins of the summit. We also remember that on the 28th of January, the PSC convened an emergency ministerial level session on the conflict in the country. This was prompted following the advancements of the M23 into South Kivu, capturing several towns, including Goma, and their advancements towards Bukavu, which is the biggest city in Eastern DRC and the capital of South Kivu. From the adopted communique of the session, we saw the PSC calling for a heads of state and government level meeting on the situation in the country to be held on the margins of the 38th AU Summit, and this was what happened. The second revision of the program of work for February also saw the PSC considering the conclusions of the 11th high-level seminar on peace and security in Africa, which was held in Oran, Algeria on the 1st and 2nd of December 2024. And the second revision also saw the ministerial session on maritime security not taking place.
Thanks for that look back, Fikir. Looking ahead, as I mentioned earlier, we are expecting 4 substantive agenda items to be considered by the Council in the course of the month. The first one of these will be held on 6th of March on the theme Climate Change, Challenges to Peace and Security in Africa, a session which built on discussions from the last session of Council on the subject, which was on the consultations on the Common African Position vis-a-vis climate change, peace and security. And it was held on 30th October 2024, coming in as its 1240th session. Then on 11th of March, the PSC will convene to be briefed by the panel of the WISE and its subsidiary organs, which include the FEMWISE and the WISE Youth, on their activities in Africa. This session is being convened following the election of the 6 members of the panel of the WISE, which happened during the 30th AU Summit in February 2025. From this election, it is worth noting that the summit re-elected Domitien Ndayizeye of Burundi, Efio War of Kenya, and Pumzile of South Africa. Furthermore, regarding the membership from North and West Africa to the panel, the AU Assembly directed the incoming chairperson of the Commission to consult with the Western and North African regions to select one candidate per each region based on the consensus for these vacant positions, and to submit to the 47th Ordinary Session of the Executive Council.
And then on the 18th of March, the PSC will convene to consider the situation in South Sudan. The session comes amidst heightened tensions between longtime rivals President Salva Kiir and Vice President Riek Machar, following the early March incident when the white military Nuer militia linked with the Riek Machar overran a South Sudan People's Defense Force base in Nasir in the Upper Nile state. This was a strategic town on the South Sudan-Ethiopia border, and the violence that was triggered reportedly due to disagreements over their placement of the existing SSPDF in Nasir station for close to 8 years, with a combined force of SSPDF, Anyuek, and Abu Shok militias. Tensions had been building since January and February, not only in Upper Nile state, but also in Western Equatoria and Western Bahr el-Ghazal states. Their new tensions are unsurprising, given the lack of meaningful progress in implementing key provisions of the revitalized peace agreement, including drafting a new constitution, preparing for elections, and deploying the necessary unified forces. Delays in deploying the necessary unified forces, which is a critical component of the agreement under the Chapter 2 and essential for the country's peace and stability, have become a major obstacle to its full implementation. Also, the second agenda item to be considered by the PSC on that same day will be discussions with representatives from countries in political transition, namely Burkina Faso, Gabon, Guinea, Mali, Niger, and Sudan. A session this will be held in an informal format. The last time the PSC held informal consultations with countries in political transition was in December 2023. This meeting is expected to present an opportunity for the PSC and countries in political transition to exchange views on the latest developments and provide a platform for candid discussions on concerning trends affecting the restoration of constitutional order in these countries that are in transition. We've so far seen Burkina Faso's military junta under Ibrahim Traoré in May 2024 extend its transition to civilian rule by 5 years, setting elections for 2029. Gabon, following the 2023 coup, had progressed with the transition roadmap, scheduling elections for August 2025, though the AU has rejected any further delays. The Gabonese voters further approved a new constitution in November of 2024, marking a pivotal moment in the nation's governance. The proposed new constitution introduced key changes, including the establishment of presidential term limits, the elimination of the prime minister's position, and the implementation of rigorous eligibility requirements for presidential candidates. These reforms aim to enhance democratic accountability and streamline the country's political structure. In addition to that, Gabon's Council of Ministers, following the adoption of Gabon's parliament of a new electoral code, which sets out the rules and conditions for organizing elections in the country, officially declared that the upcoming presidential elections are scheduled to take place on 12th of April 2025. On the other hand, Guinea's junta, post its 2021 coup, has faced pressure for inclusivity with a transition timeline, which extended to January 2025, although political repression persists. Mali's military regime, led by Assimi Goïta, indefinitely postponed elections in May 2024, citing security concerns, further entrenching the junta's rule alongside its Sahel allies. The previously agreed timeline with ECOWAS for a political transition in February 2024 was delayed indefinitely. Niger, after its 2023 coup, had solidified its shift from Western alliances, expelling US forces by September 2024 and deepening ties with Russia, with no clear election timeline. Also, Sudan remains embroiled in a devastating civil war since April 2023 between the military and the rapid support forces, with no political transition in sight amid a worsening humanitarian crisis. It's also worth noting that during the 66th Ordinary Session of the ECOWAS, Heads of State and Government, held on 15 December 2024, it approved the withdrawal of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, collectively known as the Alliance of Sahel States, or AES, from the regional bloc, effective starting 29th January 2025. However, ECOWAS also established a 6-month transition period from 29 January to 29 July, providing these countries with an opportunity to reconsider and potentially reverse their decision.
Yeah, the deteriorating security situation in the region due to the activities of terrorists and insurgent groups is also alarming. It will also be of paramount significance if the discussions delve into the duration of the transition period. Yeah, following this, on the 19th of March, the PSC will then convene for its third substantive session under the theme Deradicalization as a leverage for the fight against violent extremism in Africa. This this is not the first time that the PSC has dedicated a session on deradicalization as a strategy to fight terrorism and violent extremism. We can recall that on 7th October 2022, during its chairship of the PSC, Morocco convened a ministerial level session on the same theme, which was development and deradicalization as levers to counter terrorism and violent extremism. The communique adopted following that session identified radicalization and underdevelopment as key factors fostering terrorism and violent extremism in Africa. The session comes amid rising terrorism and violent extremism, particularly in the Sahel region, in which the 2025 Global Terrorism Index reported that the region was responsible for 51% of global terrorism-related deaths in 2024. The discussions therefore hold critical significance in amplifying multidimensional strategies, that is political, social, cultural, and socioeconomic, for countering terrorism, especially in a landscape where hard security measures, that is military and coercive tactics, remain the default policy framework. Then the second agenda item for that day will be the review of the 2025 peacebuilding architecture. The session comes at a crucial time as we mark 20 years since the establishment of the UN Peacebuilding Commission, which is at the core of the UN PBA, along with the Peacebuilding Support Office and the Peacebuilding Fund. 20 years down the line, there has been a dramatic deterioration of, or rather in the ability of the multilateral system to prevent conflict and build peace. Major global shocks in recent years have challenged the credibility of international institutions, and conflicts they remain persistent. Financing remains uncertain, and the transition from peacekeeping to peacebuilding is still a challenge. The peacebuilding architecture review is an opportunity to address some of the persisting challenges and ensure that peacebuilding efforts are effective, inclusive, and sustainable. Given the fourth review of the UNPBA, UNPBA is particularly significant in the context of the latest guiding multilateral frameworks, such as the recently revised AU post-conflict reconstruction development policy, the new agenda for peace, and the Pact for the Future. And given that a large proportion of ongoing UN-supported peacebuilding and peacekeeping initiatives are located within the African continent, documenting African experiences, lessons learned, and recommendations are crucial. It is also worth recalling that in December 2019, the AU-PSC, during its 899th meeting, the PSC requested the AU Commission to develop a draft Common African Position ahead of the 2020 review to ensure that African contributions to the 2020 review of the UN Peacebuilding Architecture are articulated in a comprehensive document that guides African member states during the intergovernmental negotiation process.
Following this, another substantial meeting of the Council will be on artificial intelligence and its impact on peace, security, and governance in Africa, which will be held at the ministerial level on the 20th of March. If you recall, during the 44th Ordinary Session of the AU Executive Council, which was held on 14 and 15 February 2024, Council aimed to explore the role of AI in fostering the peace, security, and development nexus in Africa. This led to the endorsement of the conceptual framework of the Continental Artificial Intelligence Strategy, and further directed the AU Commission to accelerate the development of both the Continental Cybersecurity Strategy and the Continental AI Strategy, along with their implementation roadmaps. This move was further supported by multi-stakeholder consultative sessions on the development of a continental strategy on AI, which was held from 19 to 24 April 2024, to shape a continental AI strategy tailored to Africa's unique context, addressing its needs and enhancing its global presence. Also related to this, in June 2024, the PSC convened for its 12-14th session on the theme Looking into the Future, Artificial Intelligence and its Impact on Peace and Security in Africa, in the commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the PSC, in which it requested the AU Commission, in particular the Political Affairs, Peace and Security Department, in coordination with the Department of Infrastructure and Energy, to establish a multidisciplinary advisory group on AI, peace, security, and good governance in Africa, and to propose options for continental AI governance, including its military application, and to report to Council every 6 months. Following these pronouncements, it is expected that this upcoming PSC session will provide an opportunity to receive an update on whether there is any progress in this regard.
Yeah, the session is timely, following the wave of artificial intelligence on all multi-sectors. Yeah, the last substantial meeting of the council will be on 21st of March, and the PSC is scheduled to have a discussion on women, peace and security in Africa. The last PSC session on this agenda was on 30th of October in 2024 during its 1242nd session, in which it marked the 24th anniversary of the UN Security Council Resolution 1325. And we can recall that the session underscored the critical role of women in conflict resolution and urged member states to ensure a more equal representation of women in all aspects of peace processes, including the design and implementation phases. Additionally, following the adoption by the 38th AU Assembly in February 2025 of the AU Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls, it will be prudent for members of the PSC to emphasize the need to speed up the ratification of this newest AU Convention and its domestication as a prerequisite for creating the legal, political, and social conditions that promote respect for the physical security and dignity of women and girls.
In addition to all these meetings, as earlier mentioned, the last activity of the PSC will be the induction of the new members of the Peace and Security Council, which were elected during the 46th Ordinary Session of the Executive Council and endorsed by the 38th Ordinary Session of the Assembly. The induction program of the Committee of Experts and the newly elected PSC members is scheduled to be held from 22nd to 28th of March in Arusha, Tanzania. There is also a possibility of having a briefing by PSC chairs for January, February, and March 2025 on the activities of the PSC during their respective chaired months, as well as an informal interaction between the chairperson of the PSC and the president of the UNSC, which would be held on the 12th of March. And a dinner reception is planned for the 31st of March by the chairperson of the month. This are indicated on the footnote of the provisional program of work.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of another episode. We wish Morocco a very fruitful month as it takes the chairship for the PSC, and we wish everyone taking part in the work of the Council productive discussions on the important topics outlined briefly here today. We are happy to encourage our listeners to dig deeper into the PSC's agenda, as well as the analytical work that we produce at Amani Africa. Before we go, as usual, we'd like to wish the following African states happy national days of celebration in March. We have Ghana, which happened on 6th of March, Mauritius on 12th March, Tunisia 20th of March, and Namibia 21st of March. Let me also thank our listeners for joining us for this month's edition of Conversing on Africa's Peace podcast. We hope you have a great month and a productive year. We'll be back next month to consider the PSC's agenda for April 2025. Until then, goodbye. We wish you all peace and prosperity.